Hey gut feeders, today we are in for a treat. It's not just the ocean that you can see here. I'm in the Caribbean right now. This is an island of Panama. And what we're going to do today, focusing on, I had too many coconuts I think. What we're going to focus on today is I bring to you an expert about mushrooms. His name is Adam Haritan. He's a forager and researcher all around mushrooms and wild foods. He teaches classes and gives workshops. And what we're going to do in this video, we're going to answer some of your questions that you have from the gut feeder family about mushrooms. Can you eat mushrooms if you have Candida? SIBO, how does that interact? And Adam will share with us how mushrooms can become part of your daily life and what medicinal qualities you can use for your own benefits. Are you ready for this, guys? Let's go. How did you become like the mushroom guy, and building a business out of that? How did that happen?
So nobody told me to go down this path. I didn't read about this path in a book. It's not like you go to school here in the United States and you're flipping through the career book and mushrooms. Yeah, you can go into a career in mushrooms. I never knew such a thing was possible. Literally, I just followed my heart. I've been given this assignment. I don't know who gave it to me. I don't know why it's been given to me, but I feel very good pursuing this path. And it involves mushrooms. I wouldn't say it's 100% mushrooms. But it's interesting because some people do brand me the mushroom guy. But I love plants. I love trees. I love learning about insects. I just love being outside and learning as much as I possibly can about nature. And not just nature as this abstract thing, but literally the land where I live. Like I live in a state called Pennsylvania. So I live in Western Pennsylvania. There's more than enough things to learn here. And I'm completely satisfied right now in my life just learning what's here in Western Pennsylvania. Sure, I love traveling and seeing what else is growing in different areas, but I'm just obsessed with learning as much as I can around here. But I guess a lot of people are interested in mushrooms these days, so they call me up and book me to teach about mushrooms and give a keynote on mushrooms. So I guess that's why I'm the mushroom guy. But I really, really do love mushrooms. I still look for mushrooms even if there's 2 feet of snow on the ground. And I will still find mushrooms because all you have to do is look on trees and you'll see signs of fungi.
You said you also eat them and you use them. Is there something for you where you felt like you healed yourself with mushrooms or that kind of improved your health? Or were you just always healthy because you eat this is not healthy. You eat all the plants like just from the ground and you're kind of healthy anyway?
I wish it was that easy. I wish there was one mushroom you could take or just do this and you could be perfectly healthy. But it's interesting because maybe 10 years ago, I was pretty sick. I felt worse than I ever felt in my entire life. And a lot of it had to do with gastrointestinal issues. And I started getting into mushrooms. I'm not going to be so naive to think there's one mushroom that I took that fixed everything. But it was part of the process in conjunction with so many other things. But you asked about, did a mushroom teach you anything or what have you learned from mushrooms? The greatest thing that I received from mushrooms is it put me on this path. Like it helped me find my mission. It helped me dive into this assignment and share my gifts with the world. And so if anybody says mushrooms are not medicinal, I think that something that can help you find your passion is probably the most medicinal thing that you can find in your entire life. And so
most of the questions from the gut feeder community come around the gut. It also is all about the microbiome, and most gut feeders have issue with things like SIBO. I don't know if you have heard about it. It's like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. What a name. Medicine. And then you have Candida and you have, IBS, leaky gut, constipation, abdominal pain, acid reflux, like all of that. That's basically what people struggle with. And I would love to I have a few specific questions from gut feeders, but also if you can just talk about if how mushrooms can help with like anything that is related to the gut. May it be improving the microbiome or getting rid of symptoms. Do you have any experience with that? And heard about that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of emerging research, and I say a lot of pretty loosely because relatively speaking, there's not that much research on it compared to the microbiome containing bacteria. But there's a lot of research on something called the mycobiome, mycobiome, which I kind of alluded to at the beginning of this interview. But by far the vast majority of studies on the gut microbiome is on bacteria. which is not in the same kingdom, not closely related to mushrooms or fungi at all. But if you ask anybody about the microbiome, like what is in the microbiome, they're always going to tell you bacteria. It's bacteria, right? Just bacteria. It's a large portion of it, but it's not the only thing in there. You've got viruses in your microbiome, you've got archaea in your microbiome, and you've got fungi as well. Now, relatively speaking, there aren't that many mushroom species or fungal species in your microbiome compared to bacteria, but it's still an incredibly important part of your microbiome. And I encourage anybody watching this to just look into it. Just research myco, M-Y-C-O, for mushroom, and then biome. And you're going to see some studies coming out on it showing the importance of trying to not necessarily gain control of your microbiome, but be aware of it and take steps to ensure that it is healthy. And there's a couple things that people can do, and a lot of it has to do with diet. I mean, whenever you eat things, there are fungal species, even on an apple. You pick an apple, especially a wild apple, there are yeast species, and don't forget that yeast is a fungus that can transiently, so not long-term, but it can colonize the gut, and it can affect the physiology of the body in the short term. But a lot of people talk about candida and candida overgrowth, and candida is a fungus. And one thing that keeps candida in check is a healthy bacterial microbiome. So whenever people take antibiotics, of course, bacteria goes down, bacterial levels, but something that shoots up is fungi. There's fungal overgrowth, specifically candida. And there are good fungi in the body. There are bad fungi in the body, but a lot of it's just relatively speaking. A lot of it's commensal, and then it could be opportunistic where if something's out of whack, like you take an antibiotic, then one thing can shoot up. But it's really important to focus on this stuff because everybody focuses on the bacteria, but there's just so much emerging research on this mycobiome. And I think in the next 5 to 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to see more steps on how to take care of the mycobiome. A lot of it's just general advice right now. Like if you eat a lot of carbohydrates, then you feed candida. So maybe cut back on the carbohydrates. It's like we've heard that stuff before. Like what else can I do? Probiotics and prebiotics and all this stuff as well.
I have people like being for years on the candida diet, avoiding like fruits, avoiding any healthy sugars, don't eating carbohydrates. They're not getting better. And like one of this big myth about candida is that it's kind of, that is the bad thing, the fungi, this yeast, this is the bad thing, but actually it's just like a symptom, because candida actually takes care of like the viruses and all of those viral debris, that the body doesn't know what to do. Candida like eats it up and transforms it into something non-toxic. So it's not like that candida is the bad thing. It's more about a symptom and then looking into what's the underlying issue, like what kind of resistant strains of bacteria, for example, streptococcus, are lying there, one interesting thing I would like to ask you is, what do you think about, like, people always ask me, and I'm just mentioning a few people here from the gut feeder community. Just give me a second. So one of the questions that comes up all the time, like Indu from the gut feeder community asks, can I eat mushrooms when I have IBS, Gerd, or Candida issues, and Candida issues? Then Thomas Shortland, I have heard mushrooms are bad for people with Candida and SIBO because it is a fungus. And then again, Black Panther, are mushrooms okay while hitting Candida? What's your take on it? I have one too.
Well, first, I'm not a doctor. I spend most of my time foraging mushrooms and just teaching people about the benefits of nature connection, just being out there in the woods. I do have a nutrition degree. That's what I studied at the university level. So I did look somewhat into this, but by no means am I an expert on this. And it's difficult to make generalizations because one thing I learned studying diet for a long time is there's no one diet that's going to work for everybody. Even the diet that I practice is not the same diet that anyone in my family would probably benefit from long term. Even somebody so close to me genetically speaking, because we all have different traumas. We all do different things outside. We all have slightly different physiologies. And in the case of maybe somebody who's not blood related, then we have different backgrounds. We have different genetics completely. So if I make a recommendation, it's not going to apply to everybody. But as far as mushrooms and having a fungal overgrowth in the body, whenever we talk about mushrooms, mushrooms are a fruiting structure of some fungal species, and they're not yeast species. So there's a difference between the fungi in the woods that produce mushrooms, those fruiting structures, and yeast or molds. They're completely different species altogether. They're completely different groups of mushrooms. And so there isn't too much, if any, good evidence to suggest that eating a lot of mushrooms, especially wild forage mushrooms that you cook properly and you prepare properly, and they're not moldy to begin with, that they're going to lead to some kind of fungal overgrowth in the body. Because, I mean, we kind of joked about this before, but it seems that carbohydrates and some sugar can, in some cases, exacerbate yeasty issues in the body. And whenever you look at mushrooms, they're very low in sugar and very low in digestible carbohydrates. There are carbohydrates. Over 50% of the dry weight of a mushroom is carbohydrate, but it's fiber. It's insoluble fiber and it's soluble fiber, and they act as prebiotics to feed healthy bacteria. And so there is some good research to suggest that just eating mushrooms helps to feed good bacteria in your body, meaning if you have a good, healthy bacterial population, it can keep some of the pathogenic fungal species down. But it's all individual. I mean, what I recommend is just try it on yourself, you know? Give it 6 weeks, give it 8 weeks, try some mushroom species and see what happens. Just be really in tune with your body. And that's what I found out. I mean, you'll never read about this in a nutrition book, to be in tune with your body, you know, to listen to your body. And it's tough. It's difficult. There are just so many choices out there. All these diet books, people telling you to do this, to do that. At the end of the day, just listen to your body and maybe look into what your ancestors ate as well. Because I think they hold the key to what is natural for your body. Meaning, where do you come from? Like, which part of the world do you come from? What diets were they practicing? Because you come from that lineage. And my ancestry is not here in North America, even though I live here. So lately I've been looking into, you know, what have my ancestors been eating? And a lot of that stuff is what has been working for me for the past couple of years. And I didn't even look at that stuff a couple of years ago, but now I'm looking into it and it kind of makes sense. But as far as mushrooms feeding yeast in the body, not too much research to suggest that's the case. I'm sure that happens to some people. I can't say, no, it's never happened to anybody that's out there. But very low in sugar, high in carbohydrates that are non-digestible to a large degree, meaning it acts as a prebiotic that can actually feed the good bacteria, keep some of the yeasty species down.
And also, it's a lot of protein, right? Like plant-based protein that you get with mushrooms, and vitamin B, and trace minerals like zinc and copper and potassium. Like I'm thinking about like normal brown, you know, this more like brown portobello mushroom. You see, I have no idea, like the champignon kind of type of thing, the brown one.
Yeah, there's a lot of nutritional benefits to mushrooms as well. And you mentioned protein. It's interesting because, at first, we're generalizing with mushrooms. It's like saying plants have these vitamins and minerals. It's like, you know how many plants are out there? When you go to like rice is a plant, but it's totally different than broccoli. You know, it's different than seaweed. It's different than an apple, but they're all plants. And so whenever we say mushrooms are good for this, it's like, do you know how many species of mushrooms are out there? It's so difficult to generalize with all this. But generally speaking, whenever we look at the protein content, it's not incredibly high in protein. But what research suggests is that animal protein seems to be pretty high. Like if you eat an animal, you get a lot of protein. Fungi seem to be a little lower than that, but higher than plants as far as digestible protein. So it can be a good source of protein as well. But also the vitamins, you mentioned B vitamins. Vitamin D is a big one as well. I don't know if you want to get into vitamin D at all, but vitamin D isn't that easy to come by unless you're out in the sun or unless you're eating oily fish or fatty animals. Plants aren't very good at acquiring vitamin D, but mushrooms are. And vitamin D is associated with a whole host of beneficial effects in the body.
I heard this. My instructor who taught me naturopathy, where I did also my degree, what he did, he was always getting these oyster mushrooms, and then he got them and then he put them in the sun for like increasing the vitamin D content, and he was eating them because he was eating plant-based, so he didn't eat animals. What do you think of that? Have you heard of that?
What a strange friend you have. No, I'm just kidding. I do that too. Yeah, I've heard of it. That's one way to increase the vitamin D content of fungi. because in their cell walls, they have a sterile compound known as ergosterol. It's kind of like cholesterol for human beings or in animals. Now, mushrooms don't have cholesterol, but their compound is ergosterol. It's in their cell walls, and it serves the mushroom very well. That compound can be converted into vitamin D2 if it's exposed to sunlight. Kind of like how if we go out into the sunlight, we have a compound on our skin that's a precursor to cholesterol, which gets converted into vitamin D3. Now, some people would say, well, vitamin D2 isn't the same as vitamin D3, so can it actually improve levels in the body? Does it have any physiological effects? Well, there is good research on this to suggest that vitamin D2 from mushrooms can improve vitamin D levels in the body. And how you want to increase that in a mushroom is to put it out in the sunlight, just like you would put your body out in the sunlight. And if you can increase the surface area of it, you can increase the vitamin D2 content. So the reason people put it upside down is because there are gills on the bottom of a mushroom, and there's a lot of surface area there. So there's a lot of that ergosterol compound being exposed to the sun. And research suggests that up to 2 hours is sufficient to increase the vitamin D content 10 times in a fungus. So you can get your daily intake of vitamin D by consuming mushrooms. But it is vitamin D2. It isn't vitamin D3, but it's still biologically active.
Yes. Oh my God. This is so amazing. Like listening to this right now, like not for me because I'm living in the tropics, but for most part of the gut feeder community doesn't have that luxury. So like, would it also work when it's not like, can it be any type of edible mushroom that you get in the supermarket and you just cut it up and then you put it in the sun and then it does the job with the vitamin D? Or is it just oyster?
Any wild mushroom that you find, even the ones in the grocery store. So the ones that you find in the grocery store naturally don't contain a lot of vitamin D because a lot of those are grown in darkness or there's not a lot of UV light hitting them. The ones that you forage in the wild, so long as there's some sunlight hitting them during their growing stage, they're naturally going to contain more vitamin D. And you can increase that. Even the ones you buy in the grocery store, even the dehydrated ones, you can buy dehydrated mushrooms and put them out in the sun. It seems that if there's more moisture in there, if you rehydrate it just a little bit, like 30% moisture, you can increase that vitamin D2 content. There's a lot of research on this. And I like looking into this research because I'm trying to see, a lot of people ask me these questions, so I like to answer them as best I can. But all you have to do is look online, vitamin D, mushrooms, how to increase those levels. But just simply put any mushroom you buy at the grocery store, just put it out in the sun for a little bit, and the vitamin D2 content will go up. And if you can increase the surface area of it, it'll go up even more.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Wow, this is like a super simple, practical tip for the community to just do, when I think, because the vitamin D is such a hype, oh my God, we are vitamin D deficient and nobody talks about zinc or B12 or anything like that. So that's a really good one. I like that. You mentioned that like one of the most important things for you, or what you also teach, is like that people learn to listen to their body. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering, this is the base message from Gut Feelings from the channel, and that's why I was also so happy you mentioned that, and we are kind of connecting there. How do you do that, like for yourself? Like, how did you learn that? What do you think? How can people do that? Because you said also, and I get that from clients and gut feelers a lot, there's so much, so much noise, everybody, can't eat bananas because they're high in sugar, they spike your blood sugar levels, which is complete bullshit. It's just, like it's the glycemic index from bananas is 51, which is low is until 55. It's like, it's complete like nonsense, but still they come like, can I eat bananas? I can't eat this. I'm not allowed to eat nightshades. Mushrooms are bad for candida. So there's so much noise. How do you do that to connect to your body? How?
So I guess I can get real metaphysical and say, just meditate and you're going to get all the answers. You're going to get the download. And that might work for some people. On a practical level, and I'll just share what I did. I picked a symptom in my body that was very resistant to any kind of work that I was doing. And it was poor skin. It was acne all over my body. And nothing that I was doing was making it go away. Like I took drugs to try to make it go away, like legal drugs. Like when I was growing up, like my parents would prescribe me these things, and nothing seemed to take it away. And so I used that as just, that's the symptom that I'm going to watch literally for the rest of my life. And even to this day, if I get off track a little bit, I see it start to flare up again. Not significantly now anymore, because it took a very long time to try to like maintain what was going on. But just pick a symptom in your body. If it's gut pain, then it's gut pain. And just work on that. And every time you eat something, just watch it and see what happens. And just listen and see what happens. And I tried all different kinds of things. I mean, I experimented with so many different kinds of diets. I did the elimination diets. I tried vegetarianism. I tried veganism. I tried raw food. I tried fasting, all this stuff. And I'm going to say it all worked. All of it worked, because it all told me what to do and it all told me what not to do. I found out, oh, I'm never going to do that thing again. I'll do some of that. Oh, I'm never going to do that again. And it's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 2 weeks. I say give it 7 years. People say 7 years. Oh my God, 7 years. But it's like, you probably trashed your body for the first 20 years, 25, 30. You think you're going to fix that in 2 weeks? You think you're going to fix it in a month? Just give it 7 years and then come back to me and tell me what happened. But there's just so many things that people can do. And there's just so much information out there, but you owe it to yourself, and not just to yourself. I mean, if you can try to just picture your future generations, your kids, your grandchildren, do it for them as well. Because I think you owe it to them to teach them the right way to eat and the things not to eat. And unfortunately, I didn't get that kind of education. I never got it in school. You think we would get this education in school, like what the body desires, what we should eat. But I think there's just too much invested otherwise in order to teach us the other way, not to do those kinds of things. Another thing people can do, and I kind of mentioned this before, study your ancestry. See what they were eating, because your ancestors were probably eating foods much more healthy than the foods that we're eating today. And if you want to even go back farther than that, wherever you are, it doesn't matter if you're in Panama, it doesn't matter if you're in North America, it doesn't matter if you're in Ukraine, what would a natural human being eat in that situation before agriculture even? That far back, what would a human being eat? I mean, you look outside in nature. Do you think a squirrel is confused as to what its natural diet is? Do you think a white-tailed deer is like studying up nutrition, or the mother is teaching it exactly what to eat? They just know, because they're out on the landscape. They're from that area. They intuitively know what their natural diet is. Why is the human species the only species that doesn't know what its natural diet is?
Because
there's so much confusion. Oh, you have an answer?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have an answer for that. Because we are not, I mean, for me, this is something that is like the way I understand food and the way I understand like healing process is not just about diet. It's also about like purpose, you know, what you mentioned with the mushrooms and dedication and giving back and emotional resilience and relaxation and joy and all of that. But the way I like got closer and closer to myself is just that, you know, it's going out in nature and watching nature, being like, for example, right now I had like a really tough few days, like emotionally, lots of stuff going on, and I was just crying so much, and I naturally was going to a river, you know, naturally like being drawn to a river and just sitting there. I had so much to do with my business, but I was like, no, this is not happening, you know. Peggy's just sitting there at the river crying, you know, like Cry Me a River, Justin Timberlake, there we go. Like, I was just watching the river, you know, there was like obstacles, and then I understand, you know, it's beyond words, it's beyond Netflix, it's beyond studies and beyond YouTube. It's just nature teaches, you know, and heals. Mm-hmm. And then there comes this calmness, and I feel like, wow, you know, something is happening, something is moving.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, go out into nature. It has the answers. So civilization, not always. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it has great answers. But I mean, the Taoists had it right. Just go into nature. It has all the lessons that you would ever need, ever, anytime you ever have a question. Look at an oak tree, or look at a maple tree, or look at the river, and see what it's trying to tell you. And I know we're getting into like woo-woo territory, but it works for some people. It's worked for me, and maybe it'll work for you. And if not, that's fine. As long as you're getting the results that you want, who can argue with that? But I think a lot of people aren't getting the results that they want. So we're looking for answers. And ultimately, nature does have the answers. But fortunately, and this is a benefit, it doesn't advertise the answers like a billboard on the side of a highway, because it demands more of us. Nature's very intelligent, it's complex, and it wants us to be complex and intelligent at the same time. And so you have to look for the subtle signs, not just the initials scratched on a tree.
Yeah. So like for me, the answer is why are we confused what we're eating? You know, why are we not like the squirrel? There are actually black squirrels out there in the garden right now. Why are we not like them? You know, when I watch them sitting in the tree and they're just like leaf after leaf, let the half of the leaves fall down and you just see like raining leaves. Mm-hmm. Very funny. Why are we confused about that? It's because we are not in touch with ourselves anymore. We have we, in a way, we evolved so fast into one direction that we actually missed like that part like grew and was very focused and achieving and stuff. And then like things like touching plants, you know, smelling, senses, all of that was like just is not that important. So I think it's a disconnection from our from our being or from our physical nature as well. So
yeah, I like that answer. I agree.
Good. My favorite answer.
Mine too.
Okay, let me see if I have some more questions from the gut feeler community. Can mushrooms make you bloated? From Michael and Oren. Can mushrooms make you bloated?
I'm sure some people get bloated eating mushrooms. I mean, there's a lot of fiber in mushrooms. If you don't cook them properly, and if people eat fibrous-rich foods and get that bloating sensation after eating fibrous-rich foods, then perhaps it can lead to bloating. Personally, I don't experience that effect. I don't know too many people who do. I would say eat mushrooms and see if you get bloated, then you will have your answer.
Yeah.
But most people that I know don't have those symptoms of eating mushrooms. Usually, eating mushrooms, what it will do for you, if it doesn't agree for you, will give you gastrointestinal disturbances like nausea, cramping, pains. It could lead to purging like vomiting or diarrhea. And at the worst side of the spectrum, liver failure and kidney failure. Bloating can be up there, but I don't know that many people that do experience bloating sensations consuming mushrooms. But that is a good question. And again, just try it out for yourself and see. And again, it's like saying, would plants cause bloating? Which plants are you talking about? There's a lot of them. Same thing with mushrooms. Which mushrooms? Chanterelles, black trumpets, king boletes, Suillus mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, wood ear mushrooms. So try them. You'll have your answer.
Yeah, and I mean, my answer to that would be, you know, like one of the reasons with the fiber content is when your microbiome is impaired and you do not have the bacteria to break down the fiber, this is where the bloating comes from. So sometimes it's easier for people if they just eat like a little bit of mushroom and they increase like their good beneficial bacteria through eating apples or, you know, fermented foods or whatever choice they make. And then they come back to the mushrooms, but it's not the mushroom who's the bad guy. It's like the problem is like the microbiome is not like rich and doesn't have enough good bacteria to break down the fiber. So that would be my answer. Can reishi mushrooms make diarrhea? And then I have from George from Trim Baker, you're a fan. I would love to know more about the yellow reishi mushroom and would love to know about its benefits for medicinal quality, because apparently he finds them all over his land, the yellow reishi mushroom.
So the first one was about reishi mushroom causing diarrhea?
Can reishi make diarrhea? Yeah.
I'm sure it can. It doesn't cause it for me. And in a lot of people, I don't think that's one of the top symptoms of consuming reishi mushrooms. So for those people unfamiliar with reishi mushrooms, this is one of the most well-studied medicinal fungi with a long history of use specifically in Asian cultures. It's in the genus Ganoderma, which means shiny skin. It's a polypore mushroom, has a lacquered cap, it's got pores on the underside, grows on wood. It could be conifer wood, it could be on hardwood, it could be on logs, standing trees, stumps, all those things. Now, reishi is a group of mushrooms, and they're estimated to be dozens and dozens and dozens of reishi mushrooms. So it's difficult to say that all of them would cause diarrhea. But the thing about this mushroom is that you don't really eat this mushroom. It's just too woody. If you look at it, if you touch it, it looks like a piece of wood almost, a very beautiful piece of wood. And so people make teas out of it or they make tinctures out of it. I'm sure some people experience gastrointestinal distress after consuming it, but the vast majority of people tolerate it just fine. Some studies suggest that there might be some side effects associated with it, but generally when we talk about medicinal mushrooms, one thing that's fantastic about them is that the vast majority of people tolerate them and no side effects are experienced or reported in the literature. So for that person asking that question, I would just suggest try a reishi mushroom because they're generally safe for almost everybody that's out there. Meaning make a tea out of it or buy a tincture and take some drops. Start very, very small and see what it does for your body. But for most people, it's going to be safe. And then for the yellow reishi mushroom, so that's one species in particular. And the one that I call the yellow reishi mushroom is Ganoderma curtisii. Here in North America, it typically grows in Eastern North America, has a more southern distribution. It's interesting that it's called the yellow reishi mushroom because it's mostly red and purple, and there's some blue in it as well. But whenever it's young, it has some yellow in it, more yellow than some of the other reishi mushrooms. Compared to other reishi mushrooms, there aren't as many preclinical trials conducted on that mushroom. But there's some preliminary research to suggest that it has anti-carcinogenic properties, also anti-inflammatory properties. I don't find it that often, so I'm glad that you find it so often where you live. And I have a tincture of it. I consume it, but because I don't find that much of it, I don't consume too much of it. But that's pretty much the research on that mushroom right there. I don't think there are any placebo-controlled, randomized, double-blind trials on Ganoderma curtisii yet. Doesn't mean that the research is bogus. It just means that a lot of the detractors and the naysayers will say, there's nothing good about that mushroom. I would say there's a lot of good things about that mushroom. And I consume that mushroom. I enjoy finding it. So I'll bet in the next 10, 15, 20 years, we'll see more research on it.
Do you know, thank you. Do you know anything about like how, I'm thinking about like when people are not able to do the foraging themselves, or not able or not wanting to invest time. But we are talking about like the supermarket mushrooms that you can buy or on the farmer's market maybe. Mm-hmm. And that's probably usually like the brown one or the white one, right? How do you call them?
We call them white button mushrooms. There's cremini, there's portobello. It's a genus known as Agaricus. So it's Agaricus bisporus. Yeah, white button mushroom or brown mushroom, some people call them, I guess. Okay.
The supermarket mushroom.
Yeah.
The supermarket mushroom. Do you know any about those, like, what are the health benefits of them? When people, we heard like put them in the sun to increase vitamin D, but do they have anything else beneficial, like for example, for gut problems, but also in general, like health benefits of mushrooms, like those kinds of mushrooms?
Yeah, so those mushrooms aren't as well studied and considered to be the medicinal mushrooms compared to a lot of the other ones that are out there. There are some studies on it, and most of the studies are on the nutritional components of those mushrooms. Like they have good amounts of selenium, good amounts of iron, and they have that ergosterol compound, which can be converted into vitamin D. They have those prebiotic factors because of the fibers in them. However, there is one grocery store mushroom which has a lot of research on it, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this one, but the shiitake mushroom. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with shiitake? Can you find those in grocery stores where you live?
Yeah, sometimes. Maybe also in Asian, more like an Asian stuff like that.
So interestingly, even though that one is so common in the grocery store and it's very easy to cultivate, that one probably has more studies on it compared to most other mushrooms that are out there as far as the medicinal qualities. And there's actually a compound found within that mushroom. It's a polysaccharide known as lentinan, Lentinan, which is recognized as an anti-cancer drug in Japan.
Oh, wow.
So it's administered as an anti-cancer drug. Here in North America, there's no such thing like that. We're far behind the Japanese whenever it comes to using mushrooms that way. But there's a lot of good research on that compound specifically, suggesting that it may help to prolong the survival rate in people with gastric cancer, as well as improve quality of life. And if you do consume shiitake mushrooms and you cook them up, you do get some lenthinin, but the majority of research is not on the mushroom itself, but that isolated compound. So yeah, there are studies on the mushrooms that you find in grocery stores, and shiitake is probably up there on the list.
Okay, good. I think we're already over 30 minutes. I think that was the time limit. So Adam, if like people want to learn more about mushrooms, if they do not just want to go to the supermarket and buy like the whole mushroom section, which I dearly feel I want to do now. We have like a nice farmer's market down there, and sometimes they have mushrooms. But if they want to learn more, if they, spring comes around or like late autumn, or you want to really get into it and understand, also like reishi mushroom, which you probably can buy as a powder or for a tea, even if you can't forage it yourself. How can they learn more from you? What do you have on offer?
Well, first I'll give some offers that have nothing to do with me, because I don't know how long I'm going to be here. So I don't expect everybody to just follow me and take my word for it. Number one, just start looking for mushrooms. Like today, just go out, shut down the computer, put down your phone, go outside. It doesn't matter if it's really cold outside. It doesn't matter where you live. Mushrooms can be found in the most inhospitable of all environments. Look on wood, look on trees, look underneath logs, pull away the leaf litter. Just look for signs of fungi and start looking for these things, just so you develop a search image for them. And you could just see how ubiquitous they are. That these are members of your community, literally outside of you, but also within you. And they support you. They support your environment where they live. Yeah, they're out there. I think I can see some blowing in the wind. At least on the trees blowing in the wind. But they're outside of you, supporting your environment, which does support you, but also the fungi inside your body support you as well. If you live in North America and you're watching this, it's specifically in the United States, also in Canada, one of the best things that you can do is join a mushroom club. And all you have to do is go to a website. It's NAMA. That's the umbrella organization, North American Mycological Association. But I believe the website is namyco.org. So it's nammyco.org. And they have a list of all the mushroom clubs in North America. And there are dozens and dozens and dozens. And some states have multiple mushroom clubs. That's how I got started. And that's how I became confident in finding mushrooms and feeling confident in eating these things that I'd never seen before. People were saying, no, it's poisonous. Like, you're going to kill yourself eating it. And I saw my friends eating it. And I thought, well, join along and start eating mushrooms as well. And look where it led me, And so I recommend joining a mushroom club as well. And if you live in an area where there is no mushroom club, start one. Don't have to know anything.
Kind of a mushroom club.
Yeah. I mean, go to a library, put up a flyer. Or go online, start a meetup group. There are people who will support you and join you. And I'll bet somebody will come out from the woodwork who knows something about mushrooms. And maybe they can be the first identifier. And they could be the first presenter at one of your meetings. But try to hang out with people who support you in this. It can be difficult to do it alone. Anything that you want to learn. Doesn't matter if it's guitar, doesn't matter if it's piano, if it's carpentry, if it's a new language. It's much easier to learn if you do it with other people, and also if you have a mentor or a guide. So a mushroom club can do that for you. Then if you want to learn from me, all you have to do is just search LearnYourLand online. That's my website. I have a YouTube channel by that name, Instagram and Facebook. I have an email newsletter. I have an online class where I take people from the beginning of mushroom hunting, like nothing, and make them pretty proficient in finding a lot of edible mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, recognizing the poisonous ones and staying away from them, not eating them. So you can find me just by searching Learn Your Land. Keep studying yourself, and not in the context of just yourself. What I mean by that, we talked a lot about intuition. We talked a lot about diet. Don't just do it for yourself. As I mentioned before, do it for the next generation and the generation after that. A lot of people just want to get looking good and feeling good for themselves right now. But I think that's a new phenomenon that's actually a symptom of a lot of the things that are going on right now, to just focus on the self. It's never been like that. It was always a village effort. It was always a community effort. Do it for future generations, not just for yourself. I understand that there's this whole push for the self-help movement right now, and to just worry about yourself at the expense of a lot of other things out there. But I don't think that that's going to fix the bigger issue that's out there right now. And so do it for others, especially the other organisms that inhabit your land as well, and the future generations to come. Check out this guy here. There's somebody happy.
And there they are. It's actually dangerous to stand under these trees because you can get hit by a coconut. This is not a joke.